Welcome back, guys. It's your girl. And this nigga. That's what it is. You know, this is what we just gonna say. It's your girl and this nigga. Because you don't never know his name when the camera go on.
That's funny.
Okay, Rashad.
Please. But per usual, thank you guys for tuning in. I think last video, Cheers to Us, was our best video yet.
Even though YouTube
Yes. YouTube was playing games with our views, but we good. We good now. We at 368, I think, or something like
But
that.
it was more than that. It was 411.
They did. They robbed us a little bit, but yeah, they did. YouTube like to play games. Even on my first video too, they had taken away some views, and I'm like, how do you take away views? But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in because y'all did that. I think we even gained a few subscribers. So please continue to like, share, DM the comments because y'all was definitely DMing us. I think y'all liked the episode because I'm still on the ooh nah sex. I'm still on the ooh nah sex. I'm still on the fact that you had sex in the graveyard. Like,
Wow.
yes, still there. But
It was a spiritual situation.
who? You and the
It was
people
in
on the
a grave.
ground?
It was in a graveyard. It was spiritual.
I'm just gonna smoke my hookah on that. Tonight's drinks are not as adventurous. I am getting over from being sick, so we have some spiked lemonade here. A little Douce and Stella, similar to the drink I had last episode because it was just that amazing. And then we have a Mexican mule popping off over here. Hookah accompaniment today, I felt a little, let's just be fruity.
Whoa. First of all, we're not feeling fruity. Let's use some different words.
I was feeling a little fruity. So strawberry kiwi, here we are. The kiwi, if you haven't tried it,
It's
the kiwi is amazing.
This is really good,
This
actually.
is also like my other hookah connoisseur right here. She go check out too. But in May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we wanted to bring you guys something a little bit different this episode. Still staying true to who we are, but at the end of the day, knowledge is power. And that's like your name, and that's his name on Instagram, y'all. Knowledge. Look at how that came together. I didn't even know it.
Always trying to rap.
All the time.
Always trying to rap.
But no, we wanted to really shine a spotlight on things that, specifically for people of color, I think we shy away from. Hopefully y'all will agree. We shy away from talking about mental illness. Raise your hand if you was raised in a household where your mother was like, stop crying, you don't got no reason to be crying, you don't got no emotions, you don't got no feelings. And in all actuality, that's not real life. We all have feelings, we all go through shit, and sometimes it's not easy to go through the shit. The way that life be lifing, like right now,
Life be lifing.
it's a lot. So I wanted to bring someone on, or we wanted to bring someone on rather, that could really share her story with you guys, and even with us, because I'm sure there's going to be some things that we don't even know, you know, that Natasha has experienced. But we wanted to just shed a light so that again, we black, and we definitely deal with shit. But also too, you can pick up some tips, tricks, and ways to cope as well. Disclaimer, ain't nobody over here got a doctorate. We ain't giving out no meds.
I only finished 3 years of my social work degree at Eastern.
So please, don't be going to your doctor and talk about, that's your mind told me to do this.
Wait, you need to put a little disclaimer. Put a little disclaimer on the bottom of this at this part. Disclaimer right here.
We did not tell you to do any of these things. So if they don't work, don't be coming for us, okay? These are all things that have worked for us. But you know, now
She's gonna get a cease and desist.
right? In the mail, like, people at your job gonna be like, we watched that video. You told us what to do. No. So, like I said, I wanted to bring someone on who I felt that could really, you know, bring enlightenment to the situation and just educate all of us. So Natasha, tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm gonna talk to you guys as we're looking at this camera. So, hi, my name is Natasha. How are you guys doing?
Amazing.
Oh my gosh, you know, I've known them what, it's been like 10 years now.
It might be a little bit longer.
It might be, yeah, it might be. Anyways, it's been
Anyways,
it's been that. It's been a long, I know, it's been that. It's been a long time. But I am a self-proclaimed military brat. I was born in Maine, and I lived in San Diego. I lived in Connecticut. I've been to 8 different schools. Anytime I play 2 truths and a lie, that's always one of my truths that people usually don't guess that's a lot. And I have a half sister. She lives in Baltimore. My two parents, one lives in Georgia, the other one lives in New York, and I have a whole bunch of family all the way around. And I'm here because I have dealt with some stuff. Like, there has been some life happening to me since probably I was very, very young. And for me, mental health is something that I really do take to heart, because it's something, one, that I struggle with. Two, I was a social work major in Eastern, did not finish.
But she's close. She's
I was close.
And she gotta go back.
I was close.
Go back.
But I really did, I think part of that journey really was, even if I don't finish my degree in social work, I think a lot of that was like a self journey. I'm trying to like figure out like what my issues were, because to your point, in a Black household, my grandma's from down south, she raised me a lot, for the majority of my childhood. A lot of it's prayed away, right?
Right.
A lot of it's pray on
That's
it.
True.
Right?
That's true.
A lot of it is, and we'll go into maybe some details later, but a lot of it, when things did happen, it was, that'll stay in your permanent record, right? So it was a very much a stigma-based mindset. Yeah, it was a stigma-based mindset. So I struggled. And so I think things that maybe other communities have access to a lot earlier is something that we're just now realizing in the Black community. And then on top of that, for me particularly, because I suffer from ADHD, which surprisingly a lot of people don't realize is considered a mental health disorder, because it is in the DSM-5, as far as is anyone who's in the social services field knows that this is basically the criteria that they use to diagnose people with different mental illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
It can change, so things have been added, things have been removed. A famous one, as most people are aware, is that homosexuality was considered a mental disorder in the 70s.
Wow,
Yeah, it was actually in the DSM at one point as a mental disorder, and then it was like, nah, it's not a mental disorder, sexual orientation. So it was removed, but there's certain things that can be added and removed as well. So.
But if the professionals said that at the time, right? Why now is it no longer considered?
Well, because it's sexual orientation. Like, I don't know that it's a mental illness for you to be gay.
So, but I think what his question to your point of why they thought about that back then, it's probably also, and it actually leads into like the whole ADHD diagnosis too. It's just the less you know about things and the less things are studied, you assume that
something is wrong mentally, if you would want to. And
that's why
understanding has evolved.
Yeah, understanding has evolved, and understanding has evolved. But even like for different psychosis, like bipolar, I'm sure if you go into
there's levels to it.
There's levels to it, but there's also like bipolar, manic depressive. Like there's different types of it now that people have broken it down. So we're at one time it could have been one major category that's now been broken down into subcategories because you start to learn more.
And I would imagine that it's treated differently too, from a medicine standpoint. You know what I'm saying? So that makes sense, and I'm happy that we've evolved. But because not everything should be lumped in one little category or whatever the case is. So, but no, I feel like what symptoms, like what did you initially, what was the onset for you? Did you have symptoms? Was it a situation where, like, how did you know? Like, or what made you want to find out what something was wrong?
So the thing with ADHD is that most people have it from the time they're a kid. So that's where the stigma and being a minority, I think, really kind of takes its toll in this situation. So I heard the term ADD back then. It was ADD, and there is a subsection of ADHD that's ADD. That's just attention deficit disorder. And so that really is more along the lines of like the inattentiveness, and there's different criteria and whatnot. But you can pause it. No, okay, all right. I saw the light go down. I was like, my glow. I put this highlight on for a reason. I'm joking.
Well, no, it's the computer. It's the computer. But you should still look good though from a portrait standpoint.
I know, that's right. I'm here for it. I'm here for the phone too. But yeah, so when as a kid I heard about ADD, and it's your typical symptoms that you think it's a boy who's bouncing off the walls, who can't control himself, has impulse issues.
How a lot of our black males have gotten labeled, you know, with that, because it's easy.
And it is very easy. It's very easy to, and that's why there is certain criteria, there is testing that you have to do to be properly diagnosed, because it can be just a kid that just has too much energy, or mentally there could be things that are going on and contributing to it. But the thing for me is that I never even heard of ADHD being talked about as a female, because in females it presents itself in a completely different manner.
Interesting.
So as a female,
what's the difference?
So when it presents itself really in females, really more due to societal constraints and how females are raised, right?
Okay.
But it really comes down to more of like kind of like forgetfulness and kind of like daydreaming and disorganization and having a hard time making social bonds and friends and stuff like that. And so for me, I've had ADHD, I can guarantee you, from the time that I was a child, because I struggled in school a lot. And for me, my home upbringing kind of clouded, I think, that too. I had a lot of trauma going on in my life. So one would think maybe that would be the reason why maybe I wasn't paying attention in school or why I wasn't able to focus.
Because it made sense. It made sense, like, you know, that can't be, but this makes sense, so let's just go with that.
Yeah, and then again, I don't even think it was talked about. It just wasn't something that I think was even on anyone's radar. So for me, telltale signs looking back, because hindsight's 20/20, looking back, I almost stayed back in the 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 9th grade. So those were just pretty telltale signs, right?
And those are actually the pivotal years,
Yes,
too.
yes.
The 3rd grade is pivotal. You
Yeah.
need it for the foundation to kind of...
6th
The
grade
6th
as well.
grade and 9th is
And
like...
ninth as well. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and it was one of those things where I tested very high in certain areas, but there were other areas where I did not do well, one of them being math. Math was just, woof. But things that I liked, I was fine in. So when you know how to read and write, it's very hard for people to think that you have anything wrong with you, right? So that's also a stigma. So that's one thing that was big. But then again, in college, I couldn't make it in college. And for me, it was just a loss. I went to college, I remember feeling like completely overwhelmed. I remember I had my first panic attack in college. And I remember realizing very quickly that I was in over my head, but I did not know what to do because I was told that I was supposed to go to college. I had worked really, really hard. Being almost left back in 3rd, 6th, and 9th grade, you would think that maybe you're not going to college, and I think a lot of people in my family did think that. So I was very proud of myself when I got into college. I worked really, really hard in high school. But when I got there, I just wasn't equipped. I just didn't have the foundation, I didn't have the skills. Because the thing with ADHD is that medicine can help, but there's also cognitive behavior that you can do as well to change the things. So this structure was needed. So like when I was a kid and I would always get in trouble, like elementary school, for losing my homework, being disorganized, forgetting about tests or assignments. They thought I was being lazy. They thought I just didn't care. I honestly just could not keep track of it all, right? So it was one of those things that it starts to evolve into a story of she just doesn't care, she just doesn't want, and then the grades follow. Other kids are able to cope, and my thing used to be like, how come everybody else can go out, have fun, they have summer activities, they get their work done, like how come I can't do this? Like, you know? So that was like a really big thing, and I had gotten into, like, I would say that one of the reasons why I left California was due to these issues, because it really, really surfaced from the time that I was living there from 7 to 11. It was really, really, really evident.
So the perception was you being lazy, right? Was there like discipline that took place?
Yeah. So you know, we live in a black household. Most people here, well, we're 80s and 90s babies. These kids these days are soft. But happy on that part. But yeah, it was very much a do what you're told, and there is no questions asked, right? So it's not. Like when someone, I remember for me, I used to feel very, very confused all the time. I was very, very confused as a kid, which means I was very, very scared. I didn't know where I was going, I didn't know what was going on at any given moment because I just think my brain just didn't allow it. But then I also knew, I was very much aware though that I was making these mistakes. I didn't know how to stop them. And I would get like one of the worst beatings I ever got in my life was forgetting to turn on the dishwasher. And it was something that my parents had drilled into my head, and my father just thought that I was just I'm like, you're gonna listen today. And I remember, like, I still remember that at age 38, and it was because I forgot to turn on the dishwasher. I loaded it, put the stuff inside there,
and walked away.
And somehow got distracted from the time for me to hit the button and just completely forgot about it. So it manifests itself, and so then you become insecure. Then you have low self-esteem, and then it just starts to spiral from there.
Do you feel like that has impacted you? How has that impacted you, I guess, now? Like, well, maybe let me ask this. What did you do to overcome? Because you're a successful woman now at age 38, right? So how did you get from 7-Eleven to your 7-Eleven, not the store?
I was like, 7-Eleven? Did I work there? Where?
working.
Wait, I was like, big gulp. Like, what happened?
Well, no, because you had to. Were you able to talk to your family? Like, did you ever get comfortable enough to tell anybody how you were feeling?
Before you answer, I want to say, well, you don't forget things because when we go on vacation, you don't forget to come like, hey, y'all.
Girl, you know, Henny, you was a lifesaver for Henny, because.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Yeah, so it's weird. So to answer the question, I still haven't figured it out. I just got diagnosed with this like in 2020. So
wait, are you serious?
yeah, I'm not joking with you.
Well, you did something to be able to.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So what you learn to do is you learn to cope. So like you learn like little things to like figure out a way to like make it not be so obvious that you are struggling with this organization, right? So like for me, my work for me was like the best way that I could represent myself to other people, because I'm like, okay, even if I like don't do the laundry or my house is messy, but at least they see I go to work and I can keep a job. So I've been thankful to say the one of those items on the checklist for ADHD usually is a person who's unable to keep a job, and thankfully that has not been my issue.
But for what you do, right? Your job is a very detailed job. You have people that work for you. How are you able to manage that?
That's
though?
a great question, and I love it when you ask. So so I've been here for 10 years. I've been at Progressive for 10 years. How long have you been there? 8? Okay. You got the leadership in how many years into your career? 3?
Mm-hmm.
It took me 5. So it takes me longer. You
So
see what I'm saying? It takes me longer to get to where, and then because that's like a perfect example of how I felt in my life. It takes me sometimes twice as long to get to where other people have, because I have to figure out what I don't know how to do and then figure out a way to make it work, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of ebbs and flows with that, though. Like there's a lot of missed opportunities that come with that when you're not able to catch on things. But that's a perfect example of someone who was able to think very clearly, organized. I like to think that you're a very organized, very detail-oriented person. You're able to keep track of things. You plan vacations, like that's why I don't even bother. Because like honestly, when we go on vacation, side note, ADHD comes out because I do not pay attention. Just tell me where to go.
Don't.
Give me my plane ticket.
Don't even be in the group chat, and you'll never hear from Natasha. Natasha will hit me up and be like, "So what we doing? It's a couple days. How much money you got in here?" Like,
but you know something that this is the first time I heard you say that, right? But what I will commend you on is the fact that you was at the job longer than Asia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Asia got a leadership role before you, and it didn't cause you to look at her no type of way to where it's like envious, like, oh, why she get it before me, or allow it to like sink you into like some form of depression or whatever, and to be sitting at our table now and be the only. I got 3 keys to this house. For you to have a key to my house, right? Like that speaks volumes, because most people, especially like I think black women, they be competitive, right? So the fact that she came in after you, became a leader before you, but you did not let that sway your impression of her or anything like that. You're actually, in my opinion, like best friends.
what actually made us. I think it made us closer though, in a sense too, because
That's deep, man.
Yeah.
If you really look at that, so that could be like a form of self-healing right there, in the sense of where, once again, this is just my opinion, right?
Yeah.
That I think like healing comes in all different types of ways, right? You have medical healing, you have your own personal, you got spiritual, different ways. So I felt like saying with Asia entering that situation, right? It could have made things worse for you. Probably, I'm not really sure. It's just my opinion. But the fact that you didn't allow that to happen, and you stay strong enough to continue to be where you at right now, would that be considered like some healing for you, or?
Well, yeah, it does. It is. It's gratifying to know that I can still make it, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here right now, to let people know, because I would hope that someone would get diagnosed way before 36. But as a black female, there's probably black females that are watching this right now who do not know that they have ADHD. Unfortunately, it's a very trendy word right now too for young, so unfortunately it doesn't hold the same weight. But realistically speaking, you hear a lot more men than you do females, even now, talk about ADHD. But for me also, you have to understand those interpersonal skills, and one of the reasons why I am so good with people is because I have to be, because I could not do it on my own, because I have this inability to be able to, you know, organize my own self and have my own structure. So you almost do have to align yourself with people, one, that you want to aspire to, because you're like, damn, I can learn something from them. But two, most people, whether they want to admit it or not, have friends that can usually fill in the gaps that they lack, right? That's one of the good things about having a good friendship, is to have someone that maybe a blind spot that you have, right? So it's not by accident. Asia's probably one of my most organized friends.
But
like, honestly, and then I spend the majority of my, like, when I'm like, I don't go on vacation, because if it had to come to me, like, to plan a vacation, I would think about it. I have all these thoughts, but like, and also there's something else too to discuss, something called executive dysfunction too, where,
what's that?
So that is, and I'll look it up as well, just to like make sure that I am giving you the proper executive. Where am I at? Executive.
I do want to comment on the competition thing, but I feel like competition can be good if there's good intention behind it.
Yes,
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
because I think we do compete with work, right? So like, we both have the same type of teams, basically the same makeup, so we are each other's competition, but I still have no problem asking her something and vice versa. So for me, iron sharpens iron, because I have big spots that she helps with, because the people thing, right? That's not my biggest
we
strength.
just talked about that the other day too. Like,
Yeah, it's not my biggest strength, and being, I'm very red. I'm very like boom, 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 boom. Whereas Natasha is more green. She has more of the emotional aspect, which she has helped me to develop. So there are.
Thank you, because it transferred over to our relationship.
I'm just very militant. It's just like there's really not a lot of white. It's just black or white. There's not like no gray.
So, but listen, do you see? So what Natasha's saying, what she's saying right now, right? And maybe people on your team that are suffering through the same thing. So you being red and being so militant,
I had to change.
Yeah, definitely.
That's why I had to change, because no one on my team is like me. To be actually maybe one person, but the rest are not. So in that situation, you know what I'm saying? So,
could this? So do you think it's safe to say like a lot of introverts may be suffering from this?
Here's what I would say. I would say the people that, because I can be very loud too, right? Like I can be very loud and very out there if I wanted to be. So I don't know if the introvert or extrovert, but I would say that there's probably a lot more people, especially on I'll speak from the female perspective, when they're just talking about like they're constantly tired, they're constantly overwhelmed, they don't know how they're going to be able to manage or juggle things. Like those are the types of people that may, and of course there's a whole bunch of different types of criteria you want to look at. But if you notice that this has been an issue from the time that you were in school, that's really what you want to think about. You want to think about your struggles as a child in childhood, right? For me, because we had no idea what this was, my parents weren't in a position to be able to set up things that would help me learn structure. That's really where my home environment lacked me, was the lack of structure. So I had structure and discipline, chores, but when it came to homework, it was like, just do it. And it just better be done, and you better get an A. That was like the conversation. It wasn't like sitting down and actually helping. Whereas nowadays, I feel like if you knew, you would be able to not only work with maybe like a therapist or a coach, a life coach, to like structure yourself, but you would also be just a little bit more empathetic too, right? So, but anyway, so that executive dysfunction, real quick before I forget. So that means, they kind of can sometimes go hand in hand. I almost think that they work together. I don't know if you can have them separate. But executive dysfunction is a behavioral symptom that disrupts a person's ability to manage their own thoughts, emotions, and actions. It's most common with certain mental health conditions, especially addictions, behavioral disorders, brain development disorders, and mood disorders. So the next thing on Google, I love Google, is executive function the same as ADHD? While individuals with ADHD make up a large percentage of those with executive function difficulties, they are not necessarily the same condition. So basically, there's like different ways that and it's funny because I think about it like as a kid, like you teach your son, right? Okay, you pick up your stuff, say you tell him they'll clean up his room, right? For like maybe a 4 or 5 year old, that's a lot. Like that's just like, where do I start? Where do I start? that's part of executive functioning, where you teach, this is how you break down larger tasks, this is how you time manage, this is how you regulate your emotions. All that is part of executive functioning. It's the part of your brain that it allows you to do those sorts of things. So I have a hard time starting things, right? So for me, it's like if I don't know how to do something, it's not just as easy as for me just to read it. I almost have to see it in order for me to be able to understand. Can I make my own process? Sure. It takes me a while though. I'm much better at jumping into someone else's process because the framework is already there. I don't like to have too small of a box to work in, but I like to just be able to have, because it just the way my brain works.
So is it a hereditary, or can it be something? Can it be cultural? Can it be like your environment causes somebody to have these symptoms?
I don't know if they know that, to be honest with you. I think a lot of things they are not sure whether. I think ADHD can be hereditary. My mother most certainly has other forms of mental illness, and she has learning disabilities as well. So that most certainly, it's basically brain chemistry. It's really it's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, really I would think, because genetics, we pass so much off, to our offspring or whatever the case is. So I would almost think that it is hereditary. You know what I'm saying? Like scientifically, I don't know, but in my opinion would be that.
Yeah, I don't think it would be anything environmental, because I really do think it's something that I've had almost, and I've known that I just never knew. And so also what's interesting too is before I got to this diagnosis of ADHD, again at age 36, I thought I just suffered from anxiety and depression, right? So I thought that, so that's also the problem with it, is that the ADHD can be the main driver, but then you have all these symptoms that come as a result. So as a result of me not being able to manage my time, I am constantly falling behind on bills, falling behind. So then that can cause you to feel a certain way as far as how you feel about yourself, your self-esteem, which can cause you to go into a depression, or procrastinating can cause you to leave things to the last minute, right? Which can cause anxiety. So these things can just be a spiral, right? And then the failures of not being able to get through normal life things, right? I didn't have kids largely because I'm like, how the hell am I gonna marry somebody else? Like, honestly,
so is that why you don't have any children? Could you still?
It's a large reason why I don't, because I could never, even as a kid, I never fantasized about having kids, because I'm like, I don't even know what's going on here. Like, so like, but things like that, it prevents you from being in a relationship, because you don't know how to manage those social, right? Those social interactions. So it could just be a lot of things that can affect your life that you don't even realize until you're like, oh, okay, maybe this is what's going on.
So do you have a boo? You got a boo? The people want to know. The people want to know.
Why do I feel like this is going to be the clip that Anthony's going to be like, what's good? Yes, shout out to Anthony. He's my best friend from 20 years. He also has ADHD, actually.
Really? Mm-hmm. So how does that dynamic work?
First I want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing this. Because prior to this, I never knew none of this. So the fact that you're coming on here and you're not just telling like me, I don't know if Asia know, but a lot of people that's watching, I feel like
your truth.
That's real good. And like, do you think in this very moment, this is also can add to your healing, that you're being very vocal to people that you may not even know? You giving them a piece of you, because I know you private. So for you to do this, did it take a lot for you to get here today, to come here to share?
No, I'm a very open book. I'm very transparent.
Maybe get back to her boo after this.
Yeah. I still do that. No, I love Anthony. I'm a very transparent, very open book. I actually don't really care. I'm actually very open and let people know. Because I think for me, because I struggled for so long with finding this diagnosis, that really COVID forced me, because COVID was, I was like, I can't do this working from home. I was like, it was just a complete change. And again, working from home, you have to self-pace, self-regulate. That's also another reason why I never wanted to work from home. Work gave me a structure. It gave me a routine. And that was something that I wanted. So I was very, very nervous about that. But that was actually what really helped me. I went to a therapist who was Spanish. Gotta love.
Shout out to my Latinas.
Yeah. And she was
that hard? not to cut you off, was that
Therapy,
hard?
like, right? Seeking out therapy.
Because I know, like, for us, it's like a stigma. Like, if you go get therapy for anything, it's like, oh, something's wrong. Like, you're a black sheep. Like, how did you even? What made you even consider that?
So I'll bring it back a little bit. So funny story. One of the behavioral instances that again was overlooked, and thinking back, I don't know if those doctors knew or had an idea, but they just knew I wasn't crazy. So I used to run away when I was a kid because I used to get very, very stressed. At home was just too much. Home life was just too much. School was just too much. I wasn't keeping up with anything. I wasn't keeping up with my children. I wasn't keeping up with schoolwork. I was constantly getting punished. You want to talk about, remember that song Brady, Sitting Up in My Room? That was like my theme song. Sitting up in my room. Like, when I tell you that, but I think my longest punishment was like 2 months. Like straight, of like not being able to go outside, not being able, like I'm not joking with you. I remember my friends were like, "Hey, you always on punishment." And I remember they used to be like, "Why don't you just do what they tell you to do?" And I'd be like, "I try." Like, anyways. But so it came to a head when I was about 11 years old, and I think my brain was just like, I just was over it. I was over it. I didn't know what was wrong, but I constantly was getting in trouble. My parents were super duper upset with me, like almost on a daily basis. I was flunking out of school, like this was 5th grade. And I just was like, I just had so many emotions going on at age 11 I didn't know how to express. So I ran away. And by run away, I meant like I just wouldn't go home. I went like down the street and like petted some horses, or like went to Walmart. But anyways, I didn't come home, and it caused a panic, and I did that a couple times to the point where they thought something was wrong with me. Probably thought I was deviant, because again, black children, deviance versus anything mental. So I actually got sent to a children's hospital for a 10-day psychiatric hold. So I had to stay there for 10 days, and they realized there was nothing wrong with me.
Do you think if that same situation, not to cut you off, but do you think if that same situation happened today, do you think that would be the result? Like,
no.
The parents would send their kids off to a hospital?
No. I think there are counselors in school. I think there's
a lot more resources.
There's a lot more resources in school now that would probably recognize. I know my teachers recognized that something was going on, but again, because I had such a traumatic childhood with, my mother with addiction and all this other stuff, that it was just very easy to pass it off. I actually think that had I had a more normal childhood, that I think that might have been more
accepted. They would have
acknowledged, because right now they can excuse it away as just bad behavior as a result of
the household.
The situation I was in before. So, but yeah, so I went to a 10-day psychiatric hold, and I say that only to say that was probably one of my first times I went to therapy, was because after that they were like, well, she probably should go to therapy with some shit that's going on with her. So it didn't really help, because unfortunately that therapist, as a kid, they just talk to the parent, and then the parent, depending on how good of a parent they are, will only dismiss it or internalize it or take it personal, right? And take it as a as kind of like
an attack.
Yeah, well, attack on them, but almost like a reflection on them as how they're raising.
They did something, they didn't do something.
Yeah, so it can be problematic if they're not looking to help. And again, telling a black person, that you can, so it's just a lot of stuff.
Was it a white person at that time?
Oh, they were always white.
No, I'm talking about when you first went to the hospital. Was the therapist a white?
Yep.
So I don't know your parents, but I could just visualize them saying this, because we all have black people. Why you in here telling white people about their business?
I can hear that.
You know what I mean?
That's black people.
That's always been the case.
So now, as you get older, when you face with situations, you hold back from like revealing the truth or even getting a proper help, because that plays on your mind since you was a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. That, to your point, it's like literally, like, I feel like every child
childhood trauma definitely can fuck some shit up. Let's just be real. It limits you. It limits you, to your point about wanting to be vulnerable with someone. What steps did you take? How did you find the therapist? Like the adult Natasha. Like, how did you?
Yeah. So I just went on. I think there's something called like Psychology Today, where you can just go and just look up like a therapist. You just put in your zip code. And one of the things that you probably want to look for, of course, you can look for someone who specializes in ADHD, but I didn't know that was what I had. So I just went to a child and family therapist, like someone who's qualified in that. And they usually can, because what they can do, actually a child therapist or a person who specializes in working with kids can also help you understand symptoms that you had as a child as you work your way through adulthood. You know, so so that's what I did. I don't think she'll care because like that's business for her. Her name was Samantha Burgo. She was absolutely wonderful.
Shout out.
Thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, shout out to that.
So
And what was it? Psychology?
I think it's psychology today, but I know if you just go into Google and just find a therapist, if you have health insurance and you have your homepage, I'm pretty sure you can also look under your providers too, as far as
Absolutely, yeah. Because I know Cigna offers things like that, and it did as well. So I can't imagine all the other major players don't have something like that, especially now.
Yeah,
when it's a hot topic.
Yeah,
right. Talking about mental illness. Or
yeah, absolutely.
So how is this working with you and your boo suffering from this? Well, not suffering, but having the same.
Yeah, how do you guys help each other? Because I'm imagining that.
It's a lot of pointing. You ain't do this and you ain't do that. You know that Spider-Man meme where they're all just pointing at each other because they don't know which one is Spider-Man, the Scooby-Doo one? No, that's exactly what it is. You left us out. No, you left us out. We don't know what's going on at any given moment.
But it works though.
Well, so here's the thing. So he takes medication. I started medication. It's a medication called Quellbury. It's a non-stimulant. So anyone who's worried about a stimulant, like Ritalin or Adderall, people sometimes want to shy away from that. Sometimes people also feel like children are overstimulated with those. So there's non-stimulant ways for you to be able to also treat ADHD. It takes a while, so I don't know how it's working. I would say that I feel like at times I'm able to focus. Really, for me, it's the thoughts that are in my head. I can be dead talking to you, and like 5 minutes away, I'm like thinking about something else. And that used to cause issues in my family too, because they would also think I was being disrespectful. When I used to kind of just like glaze over, you could tell like I wasn't paying attention. Black households, that's like it's not acceptable.
Do you think now that? So do you think we went from one extreme to the other, as far as the first extreme being that it was frowned upon to try to get kids counseling, to now where they want to over counsel the kids? Like if a kid can't even be bad now without them saying, oh, this is what it is. He need counseling. He need to be diagnosed. Let's get him on these meds. Do you think that is one extreme to the next?
So I have no problem with counseling. I actually think everybody should go to therapy. I do understand the hesitancy with the diagnosis and the medicine. So I would say I'm all for therapy, because having someone to speak to that is not your parents, that has really no stake in your life, it really is a really good way for you to figure out. And they don't really tell you anything that you don't already know for yourself. That's actually the wonderful thing about a really good therapist. It's that you actually end up healing yourself. They're just asking you those relevant questions that allow you to kind of go deeper and think about, or maybe correlate things that maybe you haven't correlated before. Like, hey, you do this because of this, right? But as far as medication goes, I would say I would always try to do the behavioral side of things first to see if behaviors can try, because environment does a lot. Changing an environment can really, really help someone. It can really take them out of a current situation and make them see things in a different light. But also, too, you don't want to wait so long. So, like for me, I didn't want to do medication. Medication has been likely the missing piece for me this entire time. Like, you feel me? So, like, just like...
any side effects with the medication that you're taking? Have you noticed anything so far that's abnormal or... Not yet.
I hope I don't start growing no horns out my head, but, like, not yet. So I haven't really... until my body got used to it, I couldn't drink, so this is actually, like, one of the few drinks I've had in the past couple weeks, but... No, there wasn't really any side effects, because again, it's a non-stimulant, so it's not meant to make you with the jitteries and, like, you know, can't fall asleep and all that stuff. At least it's not supposed to. You're supposed to let your doctor know if you have those side effects.
So what do you feel about PTSD?
So it's funny you mentioned that, because PTSD and ADHD are misdiagnosed all the time, and for a long time I thought I had PTSD, and I might have some PTSD based on what I've done, but it is the same in the sense that the inability to focus is one of the biggest things that kind of transcend them both, right? So when you're dealing with a lot of trauma in your life, it can be really hard to focus on like regular shit, right? Yeah. But then if you have ADHD, it can also just be really hard to focus on regular shit. So they can kind of sometimes overlap. So I think PTSD is one of those things that, again, I think people use the term in a joking way, but realistically speaking, I think all us humans have a little bit of PTSD,
Especially on that we've been through.
Like we all do.
I believe personally, like I suffer from it.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think like
having been, in jail and stuff like that, and just like your upbringing, I can imagine like there is some.
Yeah, I think anybody that was incarcerated
Has PTSD.
Yeah, because if you
have to, yeah.
Because I think like right now, right, it's just we normalize like people going to jail. It's no big deal. But when you sit back and like really look at the conditions, no matter what the person did to get there, but if you look at the overall conditions, mentally, physically of being incarcerated, right? You locked up 23 hours a day forever, however long you in there.
That's gonna fuck up your brain, like your mind, like
and then you're given a food to survive. So in that food, there's no real proteins, there's no real substance. So as you in there, your mind starts to deteriorate, right?
Yep.
And then you come home, you rush to come home to nothing. So now you home, you done missed out on so much. Like say for me, like I did 11 and a half years. I went in when I was 16. I came out at 16. But society expects so much from me and expect for me to know how to do this. Like I didn't even have a license. I don't even know how to go get a birth certificate. I don't know how to do a lot of things. So, like for me, I feel like that should be something that's mandatory. Like if say if you was incarcerated, you come home. I feel like you need to have counseling.
You
should.
Yeah,
You really should.
I think these are tools.
Because you'd also, I've never been in prison, so I can imagine the things that you've seen.
Well, you was a little drug runner at one time with the weed.
That was in high school. We're gonna put things behind us. So I've only made my way into lockup. Never was obviously.
Oh, yeah, good lawyer. Alicia Johnson.
Not even. She said, "Leave me in there and see that ain't right." My mother said, "Let it sit overnight." But no. So I don't know the experiences, but I can imagine the things that.
But that could be a mental illness, though.
It's just
right?
veterans when they come back from warding,
Yeah.
they should be seeking counseling because all the things that they've seen and been through.
The kids that are going through all these damn shootings and
right now,
mass shootings, that's PTSD. Like when you are, the moment you start to, any moment you get anxiety about walking into an open space because something prior, anxiety is maybe, worrying about something that may or may not happen, but PTSD is from shit that has actually happened and we're reliving.
Yeah.
So because I grew up with foster parents and my mother, like I said, was addicted and there's a lot of traumatic experience that happened with that, but that shapes who you are as a person and it forms how you go through life. So I think PTSD, unfortunately, especially for kids living in the inner city, especially for kids living in poverty in general, that's PTSD in and of itself. Being poor is PTSD.
Well, you see other people and you're like, absolutely.
Because because Asia be saying this all the time. Like when we go out, like say we go out to the club, I instantly go from being cool to
No, let me specify. When we go to the club and there are men. That is what you do. I told him, I was like, yo, you turn into gangsta, Al Capone out this bitch. You be ready. He be ready. The face is screwed up, but if there's females, you know what I'm saying? I guess for you, obviously, females are not going to be a threat. But you do that.
Yeah, but once again, though, a lot of it is because, going to the child hall, you with 800 people, you watching people get stabbed. So, even though I haven't lived that life in a long time,
it's still in your
it sticks with you. So my other question is, all right, so most school shootings, right, or big public area shootings, right, are a lot of our counterparts, right, like a lot of Caucasians, right? So my question is, how come and I'm pretty sure, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I'm just, curious.
Talking,
So do you think a lot of times when they say it's some type of mental health issue, do you think it's because a lot of these kids have documented history versus say, an African American shoot somebody, it's don't, you crazy, go take this 30 years. Do you think if we had a documented history,
yes,
right, the treatment would be the same?
Yeah, because I don't want anyone, again, as we all say, people with mental illness are not usually in the business of hurting other people. But to your point, I think we can all agree that it takes a certain sort of to like want to go out and kill all those people.
Yeah.
So there's something clearly going on, whether it's a grievance, whether it's hatred, or whether it's a mental illness, whatever it is. But yes, I do think just in general, there are just other groups of people that do a better job of diagnosing their children to the point where now, yes, you might. So like you might have, so think about what like the male version of me might look like, and that might be those good for nothing dudes that we always talk about that can't get their shit together, can't get right, can't keep a job, can't keep this, like one thing.
Very well be.
It could be, but there's a stigma for them. So, but then for me as a
them, we call them lazy.
Yeah, well,
versus
and then but for females, it's like I've been looked at like, oh, you wouldn't be a very nurturing type because I'm also not very emotional. No, you're not a very nurturing type, or like I'm not exactly what's the lady that cleans, whatever. I don't clean. That's not just what I do. I just don't like cleaning. I would rather pay my money to have someone come.
Hey man, you want Sonya phone number? She does a great job.
I'm not.
Look, if I could convince Anthony, I would. But those things like that. But for me, cleaning again with the executive dysfunction aspect of it, where do I start? Like, and then it's just like it becomes very overwhelming, or I'll start a task and then I look around and I have 3 things that are not completely finished and it looks more messy than what it was when I started. So that can make, in terms of attracting a male, on the flip side, right, undesirable, because most women want someone who can run a household, like, maybe not necessarily
not nowadays.
to a T as far as like 50-50, but they do expect a certain level of organization. If you have kids, there's a certain level of organization that you would think, which is why I always think, like, I always felt bad for single mothers when they used to feel like they couldn't get anyone. I'm like, men can look at you and know that there's food, there's like there's clothes, like
I used to love a single mother.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Like,
there's always food in the house.
Thank you, some snacks.
Yeah,
you got some
We
Capri
heard about
Suns.
that a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, some Capri Suns.
Right, some snacks and shit.
So it's one of those things that can play a part both ways, and I think about for Black boys too. Like, I feel bad for them not being able to have an outlet. As far as, and always blaming it, oh, the father wasn't there. The father might not have been there. They could have been just fine. They could have also just been dealing with like the inability to be able to process their thoughts and be able to organize themselves to be successful.
Where do autism fall on this tree?
It's funny too, because they also talk about people with ADHD, how it can, because everything's about brain chemistry that we're talking about. All these fall under the umbrella of what they call neurodivergent.
And what does that mean?
Neurodiversity. I need to go back to Google now, right? These are all terms that so neurodiversity.
Because, man, mental health is definitely real, man. Because, like, you see a lot of homeless people, you instantly think, oh, it's drugs and things like that.
But it could be.
But a lot of times it could be, like, mental illness. And a lot of people is not equipped or don't want to be associated with, like, family members or even friends.
Well, it's that part, too. Yeah, because you think that that's going to somehow rub
somebody the wrong
way. Yeah, I had an aunt
or
who was
you
like,
think that it may be... Or, like, I think, like, with a lot of people in our community, we have, like, it's contagious.
Well, that part. Like, if you come around me, I'm going to get, you're going to have me over here losing my damn mind. Like, I could hear grandmothers.
Or they scared that, or a lot of people be having certain type of standards in the community and feel that it shames them.
Well, that's what you were saying earlier, like, about parents being able to accept their children as having this diagnosis without having it be their fault.
Yeah, so without having it be like a referendum on their parenting.
Yeah, because when I worked in a group home out here, right, it was a family that had strong ties in the community, but their son, he was nonverbal, so he used to have behavior issues and all that. And they put him in a group home because it didn't fit the picture perfect family that they had. Like, their daughter was in Yale, they both was lawyers, but they put their son in a group home because he had a mental illness.
Which is so wrong.
Yeah, and I used to just be like, why not make it worse? You give this person all the meds you want, but just know that your family don't want you. I think that feeling will never allow.
That's the PTSD. That's PTSD in itself, to know that my family didn't even give 2 shits about me, and it was just like, I want to protect my image, and you go over there somewhere. So
no,
that's PTSD in itself. If that child, again, autism or whatever the case is.
So why do you think it's shunned in the black communities though? Like,
it's just not understood. I think
we don't talk about
still
feelings.
now. Do you still think that's the case now? Like
no,
36 years later.
No. I think people are. I think we laugh at people like Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade, but people that really is like. I think if you are a parent now, you realize all the stuff that happened to you as a kid that were just like crap. Like that's probably wasn't okay to do.
Mm-hmm.
That probably wasn't okay, but how they told us to handle that. I think you have a little bit more grace for your kids now.
And social media
so.
too, though. Like you have access as parents, you have access to more tools and resources so that you aren't so dismissive of your child. You know what I'm saying? And it can hurt in a sense where it's like, damn, like you do have that. I will say, having a child and my son, I would take it a little bit personal, but not to the sense where I would not want to get him help.
But the thing about it is like you can't prevent stuff like ADHD. You could prevent maybe PTSD in the sense that maybe they could be in a situation where they wouldn't have to experience trauma. So I could see maybe something like that. But something like ADHD, it's not something that can be prevented. It's just something. The thing that you want is how you cope, is recognizing and coping. And just to go back to the neurodivergent, it basically means it's a person. A neurodivergent person refers to a person on the autism spectrum, or more generally, the term is used to someone whose brain processes information in a way that is not typical for most individuals.
The fact that you know how to go on Google and spell that says a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So, for instance, examples are people who are autistic, dyslexic, and dyspraxic people. Dyspraxic, I believe, is not being able to do.
Dyslexic?
Well, dyslexic is
when you see things backwards, right? When
yes, it is the words. I think dyspraxic is when. Damn, what does that mean? I think it's with the numbers.
So, Natasha, if people want to reach out to get more information on the different medical services, how can they reach out to you? How can they reach out to you?
Or even just to like talk through things, because maybe people are, it's a starting point, right? Like, you have to recognize and accept something might be wrong. But yeah, to Keith's point, how can they reach out to get more information, just to maybe like share their own story and see if you can enlighten them? Because not everyone's gonna leave comments. I get that because it's a personal matter. But definitely plug them in, girl. Where can they DM you?
Oh, that's funny. So my page is public because I like to cook. So it's called the Bougie. Is it the Bougie Food or is it just Bougie Food? I don't even know what my own handle is.
It is the Bougie Food.
Okay, 860. I don't like at myself.
Wait, hold on. Before you go, don't make us have a cook-off segment.
Yeah, I can do that. I can do a mini. But here's a funny thing. What actually I was gonna say. It's the reason my page is public, and the reason why it's associated with cooking is because cooking is a form of therapy. The reason why therapy really does work for ADHD is because, to your point, I have a problem with being able to take a process and start something from start to finish. I have had shitty ass days where I ain't done nothing right, where I felt like I forgot a million one things. I've gone home and I've cooked a meal and it's come out correctly, and it's been like the saving grace of my day. It's been like a start with the ingredients, and then you do the prep, and then I'm making, and then it's like a full, in the shortest amount of time possible, you have from start to finish. I've created something, and it's done, and I like it, and
so that could be a form of self-counseling and medication.
Well, that's absolutely, I think, one of the reasons why I liked it too. Also, because when you're thinking about not being able to break down like steps, cooking allows you, at least not baking, but cooking allows you to have a little bit of flexibility. So even if you did mess up, unless you mess up horribly,
you can still make it your own. Yeah, you can still make it your own. But no.
But yeah, so Bougie Foodie 860. I am happy to answer any questions. Like I said, I'm not licensed. I'm not finished that degree. Yes. But I would be more than happy to at least like anything. I think for me, it was not knowing where to start and not knowing if I felt like I was crazy, or does anyone else feel like this too? That really was just basically what it boiled down to. Like, does anyone else feel, or was this just me? And if it is just me, what did you do? That's one of the reasons why I think me and Anthony have been friends and now in a relationship, because we were both ADHD. It does take one to know one. I don't know how a person who doesn't have ADHD lives with a person who has ADHD. It must be mind-boggling. Unless you are a person who doesn't mind, it's almost you would be taking like a nurturing role in the sense of like, depending on how well that person has learned to cope, there would always be things that would be blind spots, and you would almost have to be okay with taking those on without feeling a certain type of way.
I'm about to start using this.
I'm starting to think you might have some ADHD because I'm listening to the whole nurturing thing. Like, I feel like
I just don't be paying no attention.
You know, I'm starting to think, like, wait a minute. But no, so definitely appreciate you for coming on today. This is what we like to do, guys. I mean, you don't always have to be in person if you want to go virtual. Please, we want to shine lights on the things that really matter. And next episode, I don't know, like, it's gonna be a surprise. I don't know what we're gonna talk about next episode, but
first I want to say Anthony, that currently works at the Hilton Garden Inn in Windsor, Connecticut. He works from 5 to 11.
I am done
I
with
would
the
like
shout
to
out to his
say
job.
Ashley Kearns, who work at the Hilton Garden Inn in Windsor, Connecticut, and Tati. I had a lot of jokes today at work. And you guys will not get no more weekends off until August.
Oh no. Well, it's been written.
Okay, I don't work for you.
Right, and me neither.
My goodness.
Lord, giving a shout out to the people on the podcast. Lord Jesus. But no. But thank you, Natasha, for joining us. Thank you all for tuning in. And as always, I hope you quite a vibe with us, with the sodas, baby. Deuces.
Yo, that's